Chapter 1: A Quiet Town. In the vast expanse of the Wild West, where the sun blazed relentlessly and the wind whispered through the canyons, there nestled a small town known as Dusty Gulch. Surrounded by rolling hills and jagged mesas, it seemed like a forgotten speck in the grand scheme of the frontier. But within its wooden walls and along its dusty streets lay a tranquility that was rare in a land so rugged and unforgiving. Dusty Gulch was a place where time moved at its own leisurely pace. The townsfolk went about their daily routines with a sense of familiarity, greeting one another with nods and smiles as they passed by weathered storefronts and quaint houses. The sound of horseshoes clacking against the dirt roads mingled with the occasional laughter that drifted out from the local saloon. At the heart of Dusty Gulch stood the town square, a bustling hub of activity where folks gathered to share news, gossip, and the occasional tall tale. In the center of the square stood a weather-beaten statue of the town's founder, a reminder of the humble beginnings from which Dusty Gulch had sprung forth. Despite its quiet demeanor, Dusty Gulch was not without its share of characters. There was old Jeb, the grizzled prospector who spent his days searching for gold in the nearby hills, his pockets always filled with stories of lost treasures and narrow escapes. Then there was Miss Millie, the no-nonsense owner of the local general store, whose sharp wit and keen eye kept the townsfolk in line. But perhaps the most notable figure in Dusty Gulch was Sheriff Sam Jenkins. With his weathered Stetson pulled low over his brow and a trusty six-shooter strapped to his hip, Sheriff Jenkins was the epitome of frontier justice. Despite the occasional scuffle or drunken brawl, he kept the peace with a firm yet fair hand, earning the respect and admiration of the townsfolk. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Dusty Gulch settled into a peaceful slumber. The only sounds that broke the silence were the chirping of crickets and the occasional howl of a distant coyote. It was a town untouched by the chaos and turmoil that plagued the rest of the world, a haven of tranquility amidst the vast wilderness of the Wild West. Little did the inhabitants of Dusty Gulch know, their quiet town was about to be thrust into the midst of a great adventure, one that would test their courage, their resilience, and their sense of community. For trouble was brewing on the horizon, and soon, the peace of Dusty Gulch would be shattered by the arrival of forces beyond their wildest imagination. Chapter 2: Trouble Comes to Dusty Gulch. In the pre-dawn light, before the sun had even begun its ascent over the horizon, a cloud of dust stirred on the outskirts of Dusty Gulch. The rhythmic thud of hooves echoed through the stillness as a group of riders emerged from the desert, their silhouettes cast against the rising sun like dark specters on the horizon. As the riders drew closer, the townsfolk of Dusty Gulch peered out from behind curtains and doorways, their curiosity piqued by the unexpected visitors. But any sense of intrigue quickly turned to apprehension as the riders rode into town, their faces obscured by bandanas and their weapons glinting ominously in the morning light. Leading the group was a figure clad in black, his hat pulled low over his eyes and a wicked grin playing at the corners of his lips. He was Black Jack Barnes, the most notorious outlaw in the territory, feared and reviled by law-abiding citizens and lawmen alike. Behind him rode his gang of hardened criminals, each one more menacing than the last. There was Bullseye Bill, a crack shot with a mean streak a mile wide, and Dirty Dan, whose reputation for underhanded tactics was legendary. Then there was Snakebite Sally, a femme fatale whose beauty belied her deadly skill with a knife, and Mad Dog Pete, a hulking brute whose temper was as fierce as his strength. As the outlaws rode through the streets of Dusty Gulch, their presence cast a dark shadow over the once peaceful town. They swaggered down the main thoroughfare with an air of arrogance, their spurs jangling and their guns hanging low on their hips. The townsfolk watched in fear and disbelief as the outlaws proceeded to wreak havoc, their shouts and jeers echoing through the dusty streets. Stores were ransacked, windows were shattered, and innocent bystanders were shoved aside as the outlaws ran amok, their lust for chaos seemingly insatiable. They rode roughshod over anyone who dared to oppose them, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. At the head of the gang, Black Jack Barnes surveyed the chaos with a gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. This was his domain now, and Dusty Gulch would soon learn to fear the name of Black Jack Barnes. As the sun rose higher in the sky and the townsfolk cowered in fear, it became clear that trouble had come to Dusty Gulch, and it had come with a vengeance. The once quiet town was now in the grip of lawlessness, and only time would tell if anyone would be brave enough to stand against the tide of darkness that threatened to engulf them all.
Chapter 3: The Call for Help. As the sun set on the chaos that had descended upon Dusty Gulch, the townsfolk found themselves faced with a grim realization: they were powerless to stop the outlaws who now held their town in a vice-like grip. Desperation hung heavy in the air as they surveyed the damage wrought by Black Jack Barnes and his gang, their once peaceful streets now a scene of devastation. In the dim light of dusk, the townsfolk gathered in the town square, their faces drawn and pale with fear. They knew that they could not face the outlaws alone, that they needed help if they were to reclaim their town and restore peace to Dusty Gulch. And so, with heavy hearts and trembling voices, they sent out a call for aid, hoping against hope that someone, anyone, would hear their plea and come to their rescue. The call for help spread like wildfire, carried on the whispers of the wind and the hoofbeats of horses racing across the desert. Riders were dispatched in all directions, their mission clear: find help, no matter the cost. From neighboring towns and distant settlements, from saloons and homesteads scattered across the frontier, word spread of the plight of Dusty Gulch. And though many were reluctant to answer the call, fearful of crossing paths with the dreaded Black Jack Barnes, there were those who could not ignore the cries for help that echoed across the desert. Among those who heard the call were a retired sheriff, haunted by the ghosts of his past, a sharpshooter with a score to settle, his aim as deadly as his determination, a mysterious stranger with a past shrouded in secrecy, drawn to Dusty Gulch by forces unknown, a fearless bounty hunter, relentless in pursuit of justice, a skilled tracker, his senses finely tuned to the rhythms of the wilderness, a quick-witted gambler, his silver tongue matched only by his cunning, and a fierce Apache warrior, bound by honor to defend the innocent. These were the ones who heeded the call, who braved the dangers of the frontier to answer the plea for help from the beleaguered town of Dusty Gulch. Each with their own reasons for answering the call, they came together with a singular purpose: to rid Dusty Gulch of the outlaws who threatened to destroy everything they held dear. As they made their way towards Dusty Gulch, their hearts filled with determination and resolve, they knew that the road ahead would be fraught with peril. But they also knew that they could not turn back, that they were the last hope for the town and its people. And so, with the setting sun at their backs and the promise of a new dawn on the horizon, they rode towards Dusty Gulch, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.
Chapter 4: The Gathering of Heroes. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, the outskirts of Dusty Gulch buzzed with activity. Riders approached from all directions, their silhouettes outlined against the fading light as they converged on the small town. Among them were the heroes who had heard the call for help, drawn to Dusty Gulch by a sense of duty, honor, or personal vendettas. Each carried with them a unique set of skills and experiences, yet they shared a common goal: to rid the town of the scourge that threatened to consume it. The retired sheriff, his weathered face set in a grim expression, rode at the head of the group, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. Beside him, the sharpshooter adjusted his hat and checked the chamber of his rifle, his steely gaze fixed on the town ahead. Following close behind were the mysterious stranger, his features obscured by the shadows of his hat, the fearless bounty hunter, his fingers itching to draw his gun, the skilled tracker, his senses attuned to the slightest sign of danger, the quick-witted gambler, his smile as sharp as the cards up his sleeve, and the fierce Apache warrior, his war paint a silent testament to his strength and resolve. As they rode into Dusty Gulch, their arrival did not go unnoticed. The townsfolk emerged from their homes and businesses, their faces a mix of relief and uncertainty as they watched the newcomers dismount and gather in the town square. With a sense of purpose that belied their disparate backgrounds, the heroes wasted no time in getting down to business. They exchanged nods and introductions, sizing each other up with a mixture of respect and curiosity. Though they came from different walks of life, they shared a common bond forged by the call to action that had brought them together. As they discussed their plan of attack, each member of the group contributed their unique insights and expertise. The retired sheriff shared his knowledge of the town's layout and the habits of its inhabitants, while the sharpshooter offered to take up a strategic position overlooking the main street. The mysterious stranger remained silent, his intentions shrouded in mystery, while the fearless bounty hunter outlined a plan to lure the outlaws into a trap. With their plan in place, the heroes set about preparing for the showdown that awaited them. They gathered supplies and weapons, fortified their positions, and steeled themselves for the battle ahead. Though they knew the odds were stacked against them, they were determined to stand their ground and fight for the town that had called upon them in its hour of need. As the night fell and the stars emerged in the darkened sky, the heroes of Dusty Gulch stood united, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For they knew that together they were stronger than any force that dared to threaten their home. And with the dawn of a new day on the horizon, they prepared to confront the darkness that had descended upon Dusty Gulch, determined to emerge victorious no matter the cost.
Chapter 5: Planning the Showdown. In the dimly lit interior of the Dusty Gulch saloon, the heroes gathered around a weathered wooden table, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of oil lamps. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation as they discussed their plan of attack, their voices low and urgent as they mapped out their strategy for the impending showdown with Black Jack Barnes and his gang of outlaws. The retired sheriff, his eyes steely with determination, took charge of the meeting, his years of experience in law enforcement guiding their planning process. With a map of the town spread out before them, he outlined the layout of Dusty Gulch, pointing out key locations and potential ambush points. "We'll need to split up into teams," he said, his voice gravelly with authority. "We'll have the sharpshooter take up position on the roof of the general store, providing cover fire for the rest of us. The tracker and the Apache warrior will scout ahead, keeping an eye out for any sign of trouble. Meanwhile, the bounty hunter and I will set up a trap at the edge of town, drawing the outlaws into a choke point where we can take them by surprise." The sharpshooter nodded in agreement, his eyes already scanning the streets for potential targets. "I'll need a clear line of sight," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I can pick off the outlaws one by one as they ride into town, giving the rest of you time to set up your positions." The tracker and the Apache warrior exchanged a glance, their silent communication speaking volumes. They were the eyes and ears of the group, their keen senses attuned to the rhythms of the wilderness. Together, they would scout ahead, ensuring that the outlaws had no chance to escape. As the plan took shape, the quick-witted gambler leaned back in his chair, a sly grin playing at the corners of his lips. "And what about me?" he asked, his voice dripping with mischief. "What role do I play in this little charade?" The retired sheriff regarded him with a knowing smile. "You," he said, "will be our ace in the hole. While the rest of us keep the outlaws occupied, you'll use your charms to distract them, buying us precious time to execute our plan." The gambler's grin widened, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Consider it done," he said, his confidence unwavering. "Leave it to me to work my magic on those fools." With their plan finalized, the heroes set about making their final preparations. Weapons were cleaned and loaded, supplies were gathered, and nerves were steadied for the battle ahead. Though the odds were stacked against them, they knew that they were ready to face whatever challenges lay in their path. As they emerged from the saloon into the cool night air, their resolve was unshakable. They were the Magnificent Seven, united in purpose and determined to reclaim their town from the clutches of the outlaws who sought to destroy it. And with the dawn of a new day on the horizon, they prepared to face their greatest challenge yet, ready to fight for the future of Dusty Gulch no matter the cost.
Chapter 6: The Showdown. As the first light of dawn painted the sky with streaks of pink and gold, the heroes of Dusty Gulch took up their positions, their hearts pounding with anticipation as they prepared for the showdown that awaited them. From rooftops and alleyways, behind barrels and crates, they waited in tense silence, their weapons at the ready as they watched for any sign of movement on the horizon. In the distance, a cloud of dust began to rise, signaling the approach of Black Jack Barnes and his gang of outlaws. With every passing moment, the tension in the air grew thicker, the anticipation almost palpable as the heroes braced themselves for the battle to come. At the edge of town, the retired sheriff and the bounty hunter lay in wait, hidden in the shadows as they prepared to spring their trap. With nerves of steel and fingers poised over their triggers, they watched as the outlaws rode closer, their expressions grim with determination as they prepared to face their adversaries head-on. Meanwhile, atop the roof of the general store, the sharpshooter lay prone, his rifle trained on the approaching gang with deadly precision. His eyes narrowed as he took aim, his breath steady as he waited for the perfect moment to strike. In the streets below, the tracker and the Apache warrior prowled like silent shadows, their movements fluid and graceful as they kept watch over the town. With their senses finely attuned to the slightest sign of danger, they stood ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. And at the heart of it all stood the quick-witted gambler, his charm and cunning poised to turn the tide of battle in their favor. With a smile on his lips and a twinkle in his eye, he prepared to work his magic on the unsuspecting outlaws, distracting them with his smooth talk and quick wit as the rest of the heroes moved in for the kill. As the outlaws rode into town, their guns drawn and their faces twisted with malice, the heroes sprung into action, their plan unfolding with flawless precision. The sharpshooter's rifle cracked like thunder, picking off the outlaws one by one as they rode down the main street, their shouts of surprise and outrage echoing through the dusty air. At the same time, the retired sheriff and the bounty hunter emerged from their hiding place, guns blazing as they laid down a withering barrage of fire on the unsuspecting outlaws. Caught off guard by the sudden assault, the gang scrambled for cover, their bravado giving way to panic as they realized they had walked into a trap. Meanwhile, the tracker and the Apache warrior moved with lightning speed, striking from the shadows with deadly accuracy as they picked off the stragglers who tried to flee the chaos unfolding around them. With every shot fired and every blow landed, they brought the outlaws one step closer to defeat, their determination unwavering as they fought to reclaim their town from the clutches of darkness. And through it all, the quick-witted gambler worked his magic, weaving through the chaos with ease as he distracted the outlaws with his smooth talk and clever tricks. With a wink and a grin, he danced through the fray, his silver tongue turning enemies into allies and chaos into opportunity as he tipped the scales in their favor. As the dust settled and the smoke cleared, the heroes emerged victorious, their enemies defeated and their town safe once more. With weary smiles and hearts full of pride, they stood together in the aftermath of battle, their bond stronger than ever as they celebrated their hard-fought victory. For they were the Magnificent Seven, heroes of Dusty Gulch, united in purpose and determined to defend their home against any who dared to threaten it. And as the sun rose high in the sky, casting its golden light over the town they had fought so hard to protect, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as one.
Chapter 7: Victory and Redemption. As the echoes of gunfire faded and the smoke cleared, Dusty Gulch emerged from the chaos of battle with a newfound sense of peace and triumph. The heroes, known now as the Magnificent Seven, stood tall amidst the rubble of their victory, their faces weary but triumphant as they surveyed the town they had fought so hard to defend. The once bustling streets, marred by the devastation wrought by Black Jack Barnes and his gang, now lay quiet and still in the morning light. The storefronts that had been ransacked and looted stood as silent witnesses to the battle that had unfolded, their shattered windows and splintered doors a testament to the courage and sacrifice of the townsfolk who had refused to give in to fear. In the town square, the people of Dusty Gulch emerged from their hiding places, their faces filled with a mixture of relief and gratitude as they gathered around the heroes who had saved them from the brink of destruction. They cheered and applauded, their voices raised in a chorus of praise and thanks as they hailed the Magnificent Seven as saviors. The retired sheriff, his eyes shining with pride, stepped forward to address the crowd, his voice strong and steady despite the weariness that weighed heavily on his shoulders. "Today, we have faced our darkest hour and emerged victorious," he declared, his words ringing out across the square. "Thanks to the bravery and sacrifice of these heroes standing before you, Dusty Gulch is safe once more." The townsfolk erupted into cheers, their applause echoing through the streets as they embraced one another in a joyous celebration of their hard-won victory. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the shadow of fear that had hung over Dusty Gulch was lifted, replaced by a renewed sense of hope and optimism for the future. But amidst the jubilation, there was also a sense of reflection and contemplation. For the heroes of Dusty Gulch, victory had come at a cost, and the scars of battle ran deep. The retired sheriff, haunted by memories of past failures, found solace in the knowledge that he had redeemed himself in the eyes of the townsfolk he had sworn to protect. The sharpshooter, his aim true and his resolve unyielding, found closure in the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served for those he had lost. The mysterious stranger, his past still shrouded in mystery, found a sense of belonging among the people he had fought alongside, his actions speaking louder than words ever could. The fearless bounty hunter, driven by a sense of duty and honor, found redemption in the knowledge that he had fought for something greater than himself. The skilled tracker, his senses finely attuned to the rhythms of the wilderness, found peace in the quiet strength of his companions, his loyalty unwavering to the end. The quick-witted gambler, his silver tongue and sharp wit a constant source of amusement and inspiration, found purpose in the bonds of friendship and camaraderie that had formed between them. And the fierce Apache warrior, bound by honor and tradition, found strength in the knowledge that he had defended the innocent against the forces of darkness. Together, they stood as a testament to the power of courage, resilience, and redemption, their victory a symbol of hope for Dusty Gulch and all who called it home. As the sun rose high in the sky, casting its golden light over the town, they knew that their journey was far from over, but that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as one. For they were the Magnificent Seven, heroes of Dusty Gulch, and their legacy would endure for generations to come.
Chapter 8: A New Dawn for Dusty Gulch. As the sun rose on the morning following the showdown in Dusty Gulch, the town awoke to a sense of renewal and hope that had been absent for far too long. The once quiet streets bustled with activity as the townsfolk emerged from their homes, eager to begin the work of rebuilding and restoring their beloved town to its former glory. Everywhere you looked, there were signs of life and vitality returning to Dusty Gulch. Shopkeepers swept away the debris from their storefronts, eager to reopen their doors to customers once more. Builders and carpenters set to work repairing the damage inflicted by Black Jack Barnes and his gang, their hammers ringing out like a symphony of progress. In the town square, a sense of celebration filled the air as the heroes of Dusty Gulch were hailed as the saviors of the town. The retired sheriff, his weathered face etched with lines of exhaustion and pride, stood before the gathered crowd, his voice ringing out with a sense of gratitude and humility as he thanked the heroes who had stood by his side in the darkest of times. "Together, we have faced our fears and emerged victorious," he declared, his words echoing through the square. "Thanks to the bravery and sacrifice of these heroes standing before you, Dusty Gulch has been reclaimed from the forces of darkness. But our work is far from over. We must remain vigilant and united in the face of whatever challenges may come our way." The townsfolk erupted into cheers and applause, their voices raised in a chorus of praise and thanks as they hailed the Magnificent Seven as true champions of Dusty Gulch. From every corner of the town, people came forward to express their gratitude, offering words of thanks and gestures of appreciation to the heroes who had saved their home from ruin. For the heroes themselves, the outpouring of gratitude was overwhelming, yet humbling. They had not sought glory or recognition for their deeds, but had acted out of a sense of duty and honor to protect the town they had come to love. And as they looked out over the faces of the people they had fought so hard to defend, they knew that their efforts had not been in vain. As the day wore on and the sun climbed higher in the sky, Dusty Gulch began to take on a new life and vitality that seemed to shimmer with the promise of a brighter future. The scars of battle would heal with time, but the spirit of resilience and determination that had carried the town through its darkest hour would endure for generations to come. For Dusty Gulch was more than just a place on a map. It was a community bound together by shared struggles and triumphs, by the bonds of friendship and camaraderie that had been forged in the crucible of adversity. And as the townsfolk went about their work, rebuilding their homes and their lives, they did so with a renewed sense of purpose and unity that would carry them forward into the future. As the sun set on the horizon, casting its warm glow over the town, the heroes of Dusty Gulch stood together in the fading light, their faces turned towards the promise of a new dawn. For though their journey had been long and fraught with peril, they knew that as long as they stood united, there was nothing they could not overcome. And with the memory of their victory burning bright in their hearts, they looked towards the horizon with hope and determination, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring.